Welcome to the Secular Scriptures. I'm Gail. Today I'll be reading Genesis chapter 24 and 25, verses 1 through 18 from the World English Bible, a free public domain translation of the Bible without which this study would not be possible. If you just came for the reading and don't want to stick around for the commentary, then you can get on your camel and go off to the next video. But I ask you to come with me for some history, literary analysis, comparative mythology, and conflicts, contradictions, and controversies. My master bids me tell you that this is a secular Bible study, so please release me from any proselytizing or apologetics and forgive me my poor name pronunciation. I am not a biblical scholar. I just love these stories. Now, I warn you, this tale repeats itself, thankfully only twice, not thrice. Settle in with your favorite beverage for 2 weddings, 2 funerals, as the guys swipe right when the girl waters the camels. Genesis chapter 24. Abraham was old and well advanced in age. Yahweh had blessed Abraham in all things. Abraham said to his servant, the elder of his house, who ruled over all he had, "Please put your hand under my thigh. I will make you swear by Yahweh, the God of heaven and the God of the earth, that you shall not take a wife for my son of the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I live. But you shall go to my country and to my relatives and take a wife for my son Isaac." The servant said to him, "What if the woman isn't willing to follow me to this land? Must I bring your son again to the land you came from?" Abraham said to him, "Beware that you don't bring my son there again. Yahweh, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my birth, who spoke to me, and who swore to me, saying, 'I will give this land to your offspring,' he will send his angel before you, and you shall take a wife for my son from there. If the woman isn't willing to follow you, then you shall be clear from this oath to me. Only you shall not bring my son there again." The servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master and swore to him concerning this matter. The servant took 10 of his master's camels and departed, having a variety of good things of his master's with him. He arose and went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. He made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of water at the time of evening, the time that women go out to draw water. He said, "Yahweh, the God of my master Abraham, please give me a success today, and show kindness to my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring of water. The daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Let it happen that the young lady to whom I will say, 'Please let down your pitcher that I may drink,' then she says, 'Drink, and I will also give your camels a drink.' Let her be the one you have appointed for your servant Isaac. By this I will know that you have shown kindness to my master." Before he had finished speaking, behold, Rebekah came out, who was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, with her pitcher on her shoulder. The young lady was very beautiful to look at, a virgin. No man had known her. She went down to the spring, filled her pitcher, and came up. The servant ran to meet her and said, "Please give me a drink, a little water from your pitcher." She said, "Drink, my lord." She hurried and let down her pitcher on her hand and gave him a drink. When she had finished giving him a drink, she said, "I will also draw water for your camels until they have finished drinking." She hurried and emptied her pitcher into the trough and ran again to the well to draw, and drew for all his camels. The man looked steadfastly at her, remaining silent, to know whether Yahweh had made his journey prosperous or not. As the camels had done drinking, the man took a golden ring of 1/2 shekel weight and 2 bracelets for her hands of 10 shekels weight of gold, and said, "Whose daughter are you? Please tell me. Is there room in your father's house for us to stay?" She said, "I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor." She said, moreover, to him, "We have both straw and feed enough and room to lodge in." The man bowed his head and worshipped Yahweh. He said, "Blessed be Yahweh, the God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his loving kindness and his truth toward my master. As for me, Yahweh has led me on the way to the house of my master's relatives." The young lady ran and told her mother's house about these words. Rebekah had a brother, and his name was Laban. Laban ran out to the man to the spring. When he saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's hands, and when he heard the words of Rebekah his sister, saying, "This is what the man said to me," he came to the man. Behold, he was standing by the camels at the spring. He said, Come in, you blessed of Yahweh. Why do you stand outside? For I have prepared the house and the room for the camels. The man came into the house, and he unloaded the camels. He gave straw and feed for the camels, and water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. Food was set before him to eat, but he said, I will not eat until I have told my message. Laban said, Speak on. He said, I am Abraham's servant. Yahweh has blessed my master greatly. He has become great. Yahweh has given him flocks and herds, silver and gold, male servants and female servants, and camels and donkeys. Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master when she was old. He has given all that he has to him. My master made me swear, saying, You shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, in whose land I live, but you shall go to my father's house and to my relatives, and take a wife for my son. I asked my master, What if the woman will not follow me? He said to me, Yahweh, before whom I walk, will send his angel with you, and prosper your way. You shall take a wife for my son from my relatives and of my father's house. Then you will be clear from my oath when you come to my relatives. If they don't give her to you, you shall be clear from my oath. I came today to the spring and said, Yahweh, the God of my master, if now do you prosper my way by which I go, behold, I am standing by the spring of water. Let it happen that the maiden who comes out to draw, to whom I will say, Please give me a little water from your pitcher to drink. Then she tells me, Drink, and I will also draw for your camels. Let her be the woman to whom Yahweh has appointed for my master's son. Before I had finished speaking in my heart, behold, Rebekah came out with her pitcher on her shoulder. She went down to the spring and drew, and I said, Please let me drink. She hurried and let down her pitcher from her shoulder and said, Drink, and I will also give your camels a drink. So I drank, and she also gave the camels a drink. I asked her and said, Whose daughter are you? And she said, The daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. I put the ring on her nose and the bracelets on her hands. I bowed my head and worshipped Yahweh, and blessed Yahweh, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me the right way to take my master's brother's daughter for his son. Now, if you will deal kindly and truly with my master, tell me. If not, tell me, that I may turn to the right hand or to the left. Then Laban and Bethuel answered, The thing proceeds from Yahweh. We cannot speak to you bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go. Let her be your master's son's wife, as Yahweh has spoken. When Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed himself down to the earth to Yahweh. The servant brought out jewels of silver and jewels of gold and clothing, and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave precious things to her brother and her mother. They ate and drank, he and the men who were with him, and stayed all night. They rose up in the morning, and he said, Send me away to my master. Her brother and her mother said, Let the young lady stay with us a few days, at least 10. After that she will go. He said to them, Don't hinder me, since Yahweh has prospered my way. Send me away, that I may go to my master. They said, We will call the young lady and ask her. They called Rebekah and said to her, Will you go with this man? She said, I will go. Then they sent away Rebekah their sister with her nurse, Abraham's servant, and his men. They blessed Rebekah and said to her, Our sister, may you be the mother of thousands of 10,000s, and let your offspring possess the gates of those who hate them. Rebekah arose with her ladies. They rode on the camels and followed the man. The servant took Rebekah and went his way. Isaac came the way of Beer-lahai-roi, for he lived in the land of the south. Isaac went out to meditate in the field at the evening. He lifted up his eyes and looked. Behold, there were camels coming. Rebekah lifted up her eyes. When she saw Isaac, she got off the camel. She said to the servant, Who is the man who is walking in the field to meet us? The servant said, It is my master. She took her veil and covered herself. The servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent and took Rebekah, and she became his wife. He loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Chapter 25. Abraham took another wife, and her name was Keturah. She bore him Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Jokshan became the father of Sheba and Dedan. The sons of Dedan were Ashurim, Letushim, and Limunum. The sons of Midian were Ephah, Epher, Hanok, Abida, and Eldaah. All these were the children of Keturah. Abraham gave all that he had to Isaac. But Abraham gave gifts to the sons of Abraham's concubines while he still lived. He sent them away from Isaac his son eastward to the east country. These are the days of the years of Abraham's life which he lived, 175 years. Abraham gave up his spirit and died at a good old age, an old man full of years, and was gathered to his people. Isaac and Ishmael his sons buried him in the cave of Machphelah in the field of Ephron, the son of Zohar the Hittite, which is near Mamre, the field which Abraham purchased from the children of Het. Abraham was buried there with Sarah his wife. After the death of Abraham, God blessed Isaac his son. Isaac lived by Beer Lahai Roi. Now, this is the history of the generations of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's servant, bore to Abraham. These are the names of the sons of Ishmael by their names, according to the order of their birth. The firstborn of Ishmael, Nebaioth, then Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Hadima. These are the sons of Ishmael, and these are their names by their villages and by their encampments, 12 princes according to their nations. These are the years of the life of Ishmael, 137 years. He gave up his spirit and died and was gathered to his people. They lived from Havilah to Shur, that is before Egypt, as you go towards Assyria. He lived opposite all his relatives. And also, aww. And chapter 25 wasn't that bad either, outside of a few names, which I completely butchered. Rip, Abraham, and Ishmael. And did anybody else want to string Eliezer of Damascus up by his beard hairs? This is supposedly the faithful servant who needs to repeat everything. Who needs angels for a guide when one has sign-seeking, camels, and stupid amounts of gold? I mean, if gold and camels aren't the way to a girl's heart, I don't know what is. History of the text. Chapter 24 was written in the 10th to 8th century BCE by the Yahwist source and edited in the 5th century BCE by the redactors. The repetition and storytelling format matched the earlier J narrative style. J was working in the southern kingdom of Judah, and R was working in Jerusalem in the early Persian period. Chapter 25, verse 1 through 18, was composed in the 500s BCE by the priestly source during the Babylonian exile, and then it was redacted in the 400s. It leans heavily into the typical, just the facts, ma'am, style of P. Literary analysis. Oh boy, here come the names. Characters in order of appearance. In chapter 24 we have Abraham and his servant, assumed to be Eliezer of Damascus, in speaking roles. We have 10 camels, Rebekah and Laban in speaking roles. The servant's male companions, Bethuel, Rebekah's father, Rebekah's mother in speaking role, Rebekah's nurse and companions, Rebekah's camels, and last, Isaac in a speaking role. Before I go any further, I need to tell you that I completely butchered every single name in chapter 25. Just like, wow. I mean, part of me wants to crawl under a table, and the other part of me is like, I'm brave enough to try. So here we go. I have the correct pronunciations in front of me, and I will probably still royally screw it up. Chapter 25, verses 1 through 18, is a mix of genealogy and geography, so we get a lot of names. No one speaks. No speaking roles. So we have Abraham, Keturah, Zimran, Yokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, Shua, Shebu, Dedan, Ashuriam. That's a fun name. Ashuriam. Letushim, Leumim, Ephah, Epher, not Epher, Epher, Chanoch, Abida, Elda'ah. I said that one right, amazingly. Elda'ah, I said it right. Isaac, Abraham's concubines, Sarah, Hagar, even though Sarah's dead, she's mentioned. Ishmael and his sons, Nebaioth, Kedar, Adbael, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, I actually said that one right in the video too, Tamah, Yetur, Jetur is Yetur, Naphish, and Kedama. Well, that was absolutely painful, and I apologize to those of you who had to listen to me make a total hash of it. Thank you for sticking this out and not clicking off. Subscribe if you love hearing me struggle through ancient Hebrew names. For the setting, when and where, chapter 24 opens in Abraham's camp in Hebron, and then there is a journey between Hebron, which is in the West Bank of Palestine, and Haran in modern-day Turkey, at that point, Upper Mesopotamia, to the house of Bethuel. It ends in the fields of Bir Lahai Roi, in the Negev desert in southern Israel, in Isaac's tent, which he inherited from Sarah. Isaac is 40 years old, and Abraham is 140 years old at this point. Chapter 25 lists a few locations. Hebron, the east country for Abraham's other sons, the Cave of Machphelah near Mamre, Bir Lahai Roi, where Isaac lives, Ishmael and his sons live from Havilah and Shur, that is before Egypt as you go towards Assyria. This is an overview of the family history, which spans several decades from Isaac's marriage to Rebekah until Ishmael's death at 137 years old, approximately 80 years, give or take a few years, depending on how old Ishmael was when Isaac was born. At that point, the story goes back to the early years of Isaac and Rebekah's marriage when Ishmael is still alive. Point of view and style. Chapter 24 is told in the third-person limited point of view. Do not trust Google here. Gemini is wrong. This is not the third-person omniscient. They often make that mistake, I think, because there's a lot of writings on the internet that says God is omniscient. Pretty sure that that's the issue going on there. We can extrapolate how the other characters feel from their words and actions, but Eliezer, assuming it's Eliezer, is the only one that we get definite unspoken thoughts from in verse 21 and 26, up to the point when the main character becomes Isaac and it switches to his feelings in verse 67. This does not make it omniscient, okay? This makes it third-person limited with a switch of main character. It's told in a similar style as the Divine Picnic with descriptive language and dialogue. We get a fairy tale feel for the scene and the characters, which is a strong indication of the Yahwist source. And there's that maddening repeat of the whole tale, thankfully not 3 times. I swear that I thought he was going to launch into the whole thing again with Isaac, but some sane scribe decided not to waste the parchment and just gave us verse 66, praise be to Yahweh. I am 100% certain that this character will tell this story over and over to anyone who will give him 3 minutes of their time. Church theater people, please take note of that. Work it in. Chapter 25 is told from the third-person objective, which simply tells what happened. This is typical of the priestly source, and the listing of genealogy and geography may make your eyes glaze over. I'm not sorry. Plot summary. Abraham summons his servants to make him thigh swear, sort of like a pinky swear but more personal, to fetch a super hot cousin from Haran for son Isaac to marry. The servant so swears and paces off on 10 camels loaded with loot to bring back a beautiful bride. He gets to the well, no angel in sight, and sets up literally the most common scenario he can think of, and dubs it a miracle when that plays out with a radiant Rebekah who has more than 2 manners to rub together. Dazzled by the bling he bestows upon her, she skips off to tell the fam that she's about to ride off on a camel to marry her rich cuz, and brother Laban comes to collect the guest and caravan. They all settle in for a retelling of this tale, some dinner, and a good night's rest. Upon waking in the morning, the party is off to Canaan, and when the happy couple meets, it's love, or potentially lust at first sight, and our hero Isaac carries his blushing bride off to Mama's tent to marry her. Abraham gets hitched again and has a bunch more kids, and then he kicks the bucket. Isaac and Ishmael do the whole funeral family reunion thing where we get introduced to all of his kids, and then he kicks the bucket too a few years later. Literary devices! Repetition, obviously. Moving on. A type scene is a literary convention employed by a narrator across a set of scenes or related scenes, like a place or action, already familiar to the audience. When a man and a woman meet at a well in the Bible, it's probably going to lead to a marriage, some form of relationship building, or advice about relationships. Since women, particularly young unmarried women, were the ones hauling water for the household, the well is a common place for them to go. And there are all sorts of metaphors attached to wells in the Bible. We also get the motif of love at first sight. A motif is a recurring symbol, image, idea, or element that appears throughout a work to develop its themes. Now, I do want to note that the love at first sight thing is disagreed upon among the various denominations. And I'm not really going to touch on it there because whatever. An origin story is an account or backstory revealing how a character or group of people become a protagonist or an antagonist. In Genesis 25, we get the beginning of several people groups among Abraham's children by Keturah, mainly the Midianites from their fourth son Midian, who Moses marries into and later massacres for reasons that we'll get to eventually, because that's fun. Comparative mythology. Literally any fairy tale where the girl says yes to marrying the rich prince and leaves her home to do it. Except that I had a really hard time finding one that fits the bill. So Beauty and the Beast has elements of this where the daughter goes away from home, though she's certainly not doing this by her choice. The Goose Girl also has elements of it where she's joyfully traveling to meet her handsome, rich, wonderful prince, except that she gets overtaken by her devious maid. Now, if we had a talking camel, that might align a little bit better with the Goose Girl, but alas, no talking camels in this story. Helen of Troy and Paris may have some parallels here, but it's debated if she went willingly or was kidnapped, or different variations of the story. Psyche and Cupid may come close in terms of their love for each other, and that she left her family to be with him, but again, there's some issues there. Like the Beauty and the Beast and Psyche and Cupid both have the sisters being like, oh, you shouldn't trust your person you're in love with, and that never happens in this story. So there's some common story elements, but mostly this is just like a modern romance story, except it's an arranged marriage. I'm just happy that this entire thing was consensual. Like we have a consensual marriage in the Bible. It's amazing. Moving on, we have conflicts, contradictions, and controversies. Our first one is a conflicting information within the religion. Sign seeking is the demand for a miraculous event as definitive proof of divine authority or a message from God. It's a form of divination closely related to omens and involves overlaying supernatural influence on everyday occurrences like the flight of birds, seeing certain objects, colors, or numbers, and ascribing double meanings to mundane things. Abraham's servant Eliezer uses this sign-seeking behavior in Genesis 24:12 through 27, where he plays out a fairly standard polite social interaction scenario in his mind, and then he takes it as a sign from Yahweh that Rebekah is the woman he's supposed to bring home to Isaac. It's basically the equivalent of a hostess asking you if you'd like a cup of coffee and then bringing it to you. So while this practice is definitely biblical, and God did use signs like the rainbow earlier on in Genesis, the demand for them can be seen as a lack of faith or a hardened heart. So constant sign-seeking behavior is frowned upon by several denominations, including Catholic, Reformed, Lutheran, Mainline Protestant, Anabaptists, and some Baptists. Others, like Pentecostals and Charismatic Christians, encourage it, and many Christians of all denominations engage in it. This was something that I did up through young adulthood all the time. Sign-seeking is certainly not limited to the Abrahamic traditions. Pagans, Wiccans, and New Age practitioners are very big into sign-seeking, as are many folk religions and indigenous practices. While this can be loads of fun, it can also hinder using reason and good judgment in decision-making processes. Was this a good way to pick a wife for Isaac? Was it really? It certainly worked out well for both of them for the most part, but it had just as much of a chance of being an absolute disaster. Contradictions with science. And yes, I'm going to beat this dead horse. Lifespans are getting more normal, but at some point, SHEM does die. The Bible doesn't mention this explicitly, but he would have passed around 16 years before Ishmael died. So for the purposes of the overall narrative, Shem is still alive. Controversies. You know I love me some controversies. We have cousin marriage. Okay, so I'm not going to try to track this one down, but in one of my previous videos, which I think was like Tower of Babel, I referred to an archaeological report on cousin marriage in the Levant and Mediterranean, where they did DNA analysis from several burial sites to see who was marrying whom. At the time this story is set in, cousin marriage was not widely practiced. There's no evidence of this, nor sibling marriage outside of very high status people. However, it was slightly more common at the time the story was written in the First Temple period from about 1000 to 586 BCE. It still was not common at all. Now, realistically, even though this is a cousin marriage, Isaac and Rebekah were second cousins and therefore could have legally wed in any state here in the U.S. And let me tell you, I learned some stuff on reading up on that, and if I have to know it, you have to know it too, and you can thank me in the comments. Wow. There may be an issue of family or social pressure underneath the surface level enthusiastic consent in this story. I don't necessarily agree with that theory, but I am mentioning it just because it is floating around on the internet. Rebekah's family can't speak to the servant, good or bad, but then in the next verse they say go, or take her and go. And then the next morning, her mother and brother would like her to stay for another 10 days, potentially to think about this a little bit longer. Or the competing theory is to extract more cool stuff from Abraham's servant. And then they say to ask Rebekah, who's like, where's my camel? Let's go. And that said, the story has these kids being totally nuts about each other, and I'm okay with that. And to be honest, it's about as good as it's going to get in this ancient anthology. If we take this part of the story as a template for marriage practices, that is a whole other matter. Arranged marriages, bride prices, family pressure, and marrying someone you've never met based on some old dude's sign-seeking, all potentially very highly problematic. If you feel like exploring aspects of that in the comments, I'm game. Questions. Do you think the servant's way of deciding on a wife for Isaac was reasonable, or was it absolutely bonkers? Are Hagar and Keturah the same person or different people? Which story do you like there? Because they both sort of have equal footing. What lessons can we take from this delightful rom-com, secular or religious? Thank you so much for joining me on the Secular Scriptures. I hope you laughed or at least groaned during the video. If you did, please like and subscribe to the little bell thingy and leave a comment. Overall, Chapter 24 is a genuinely funny engagement tale, and it's meant to be cute and happy with camels. Seriously, camels. How can you go wrong with camels? It's one of the few times we see enthusiastic consent, and I am totally here for it. Rip Abraham. It was fun yelling at you again. My good dude, standing up to Yahweh is always the right thing to do. I hope that you will be here next time for Esau and Jacob and a very expensive bowl of lentil soup. I will try to find a recipe. Miss Possum. Yeah. Did you just eat my paper? You did. Eat my paper. You see, my cat ate my homework. Fell on the floor and you ate it.